All this,
No, you can't see what your background looks like?
no, you know that monster look you get with all the stuff.
Right, where it highlights, it bleeds out the rest of it. I can't see
Yeah.
all that.
Okay, good.
Okay, so tell people what, who are you?
Okay, I was born in 1946, February 19th, as Ronald Van Anderson. I go by professionally Akili Ron Anderson. There's a story behind that, but I'll see if you ask me the story and then I'll tell you.
Well, first tell me what you do.
Well, I'm an artist. I had no choice in the matter. I was born that way and I didn't refuse it. And I'm glad about that because I did have choices. You know, I could have been a gangster. You know, I could have been an athlete. I could have been some other negative things which were in my community.
Right.
But I chose positivity based on my upbringing and the examples that I had in my family. Everybody has gone to college. At one point, I even rebelled against that, and then at an old age, decided to finish up. I did go to college, but to finish up my degree work. So all my siblings, including my mom, went to college,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's that story.
So tell us, what do you produce?
I produce images of cultural reflection of people of African descent. I also have, in my early days, been with a performing ensemble, which case I did stage presentations of photographs and images that I painted onto slides to correspond with the energy of the people that I was photographing, the spiritual energy.
Mm-hmm.
That when you snap a camera, you don't get that energy. You feel it as a photographer, but so I scratched and painted, and that happened because of I messed up a whole roll of film, and it came out all black, and so I put some acid on it, and that's the whole story that I'm going through. But I experimented.
Right.
All you saw were colors and energy, and film operates at 24 pictures per second in order to simulate motion. And so you can do that. I used a whole bunch of sometimes very time consuming. Days went by sometimes, uh, and I didn't realize it. And but when I projected it, I liked it, and I ended up having a show called Paintings for Projection at the Corcoran Gallery of Art when it was a major museum in the city. I don't know what they're doing now, but I was very pleased. I thought I was famous, actually, and hopefully riches would proceed. But anyway, that's that little story there.
So that talks about where you were, the relationship to photography, right? So what what other methods do you create in?
Well, one that I have been very successful in establishing a career is in public art, primarily stained glass windows, but I actually started painting murals at Howard in the student, offices and, the lunchrooms and that sort of thing, because painting was the tradition.
Right.
And so, and I took painting. I didn't major in it, I majored in printmaking. Well, actually, I majored in studying under Lois Jones. I majored in commercial art, design they called it, but it was about commercial art. And then I walked down the hall and I ran into Mr. Wells, and these are my heroes I'm mentioning now. And then a younger teacher came in, and he was a sculptor and he taught painting.
And who is this?
Ed Love. So
Uh-huh.
that's we're talking about.
What's Wells' full name?
Well, no, Lois Jones, the first mentioned, And then James L. Wells, the
Mhm.
graphic art master and teacher, and then Ed Love, who is all of them ancestors now, and he taught sculpture primarily, but then he taught a painting class.
Mhm.
And so I took that painting class, and he taught me how to throw paint around in a creative way, and to mix it with traditional imagery making, meaning blending and naturalism, painting the world as we see it, and then abstraction. He was influenced by Sam Gilliam to that degree, to that extent, I should say. And that was Sam's forte at the time. And then I met all these other people, Elizabeth Kelly, and I studied with people that I wasn't in school with.
Mhm.
So I got a chance to. Matter of
And
fact, Elizabeth
how did
Kelly,
that happen? How did you study with people that you weren't actually
I was in the
readily
mix.
available?
I was in the mix. I was in the street, so to speak. And as a shy person, which I'm not now, I won't say that. But I learned to project myself onto the landscape of life. Oh, that's poetic. So and and introduce myself. Whereas I would stay in the background and oh, that's so and so. I saw her in the book, and I would walk up on people stuttering and so forth, but saying I admire you, basically. So yeah, and then Elizabeth Catlett, saw a performance of the before mentioned group that was called Nation, that we were interdisciplinary,
Mhm.
and she saw a show of ours, and she introduced herself to me, which is amazing, to have that happen, and so she invited me to come to Mexico and study with her, based on seeing that, and I was too stupid to jump on it, and I had to study her first, and then I had family obligations here in DC, so
So when was this? This is actually one story I don't know about you. When was this?
okay, in the 70s, it was a conference, and it was towards the Black University Conference, I believe it was called. And it was during the 60s and 70s. And actually, it was the 70s because it was after I left Howard for being a rebellious student. And they almost put me in jail, literally. I had to go to court and sign a document to say I wouldn't participate in any more takeovers of buildings.
Yeah. Take
I'm
over.
serious. I
I
actually,
don't know this, but it's still hilarious. It's not hilarious, but it's so damn interesting. Yeah. So you want to talk about that? How you helped to take over a
well, I was a very impressionable young person, even though I was very shy. So I
yeah.
hung around doers, people who were doing stuff. And they would approach me and they looked at my work and my energy. They said, well, we need some help in that. They might say, well, Alice, can you do sign for me? Or can you do a picture of Malcolm X? Or can you, which I did. I did all those things. And matter of fact, I used to sell posters of Malcolm X on the corner, like right next to the Muslims selling bean pies and Muhammad Speaks. But anyway, that was part of my sort of coming out, having, you know, discussions with people, and people like to hear my thoughts, which I didn't, sort of volunteer. But anyway, I learned how to speak also because
Yeah.
I was taught. My mother was a grammar major, and she would correct me on my grammar and use of language and so forth. So I started using those skills. And but what people really like in the conversation is sincerity. I won't go down that discussion right now, but that's what I found out is that to be truthful, that's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't lie. Now you can exaggerate because everybody does that. It's an artist. I mean, that's just the reality. Everybody exaggerates, especially the artists. And so you take that into account. But yeah, to put myself in situations where I was known as a producer. People knew my work, and then they knew me through my productions. And a lot of times it happens in the opposite. But you try to make a personal impression, and then, oh, this is my work.
Mm-hmm.
And my thing was do my work, and oh, this is who I am. So, and I've learned how to do both because in public art, that's what you have to do. You have to present your vision, your energy, your determination, and the prospects that you're doing a great job to the client. And then they give you money in front. Now, that's the thing I like about public art is that they have to pay you front before you start a major project. And so, as you know, and as most artists know, you have to produce a painting, sculpture, what have you first, and then you say, "Oh, would you like to buy this?"
Yeah, it's a different method.
Right, right.
And it's not even all that they now, because they don't give you all of the money up front.
No, they never have, but I'm
Right.
saying they get you
But you mean
started.
the promise of the money, the intention of the money is there.
A
It's
contract.
not- yeah, I agree with you. So I want you to go back. I want you to just summarize what happened at Howard. What meaning the first time you were there at Howard and you were in a degree program and you were talking about how you basically decided to have to interact with other people that were protesting in relationship to something that was occurring on the campus. Can you tell me that if you
Right.
if you want to?
No, of course I want to. And I want to say also, you said the first time in Howard, and what that meant is that I had a second or third time. Now,
I was gonna wait to get to that, but yes.
I'm gonna give the picture to the audience. You're familiar yourself, but the first time was designed to be the first and the last time.
Right.
Come to do my work and to graduate on time, and maybe start a second degree after that, maybe. But that didn't happen like that, and nothing I do seems to go according to a normal script. Normal being relative.
That's
But
life, but yeah.
my intention was to spend 40 years and to graduate on time, and I was interrupted by the world, meaning that the Black Liberation Movement and so forth that was doing my participation during the mid to late 60s and the early 70s. So I went there, I was quiet, I saw people. I was actually extremely impressed. Must say that I had a scholarship to a white school my first year out of high school, Corcoran School of Art, which, as I mentioned, I showed there after that. During that time was the time when Romain Bearden was having some of his major professional shows, and one of them was at Corcoran, and I saw it, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I'm not gonna say I was impressed, but what I saw were Black images at a white school.
Right.
I didn't like the Black people, the white people, I should say, because I was one of 4 students amongst a relatively of many whites. I didn't see any Black teachers. The models were Black, though. I enjoyed that, and it was my first exposure to drawing the nude figure, and they were Black, and so I won't go into that.
I gotta ask this. So they were both white and Black models, or just Black models? Both.
In a white school, and I'm a Black teenager, and they didn't warn me that they were going to take off their clothes.
But Akili, they were both models of that were Black and white?
No, there were just 2 models in the school, and both of them were Black. Okay, they were full-time employees, which made sense from a business point of view. One was my complexion, which is a lighter complexion. One was a darker complexion. One was thin, and the other one was full. And so.
And they were both women?
Yes. So, I mean, we could go down a road of.
Yes, we could.
What the hell is that? You know, but
we won't go there right now.
Right. So, and no black teachers too. So, but I was on scholarship, and I didn't know what I was going to do. Actually, I thought I was going to be an athlete. I had a scholarship in track. I was good. But my coach came to me and they said, guess what? They don't have an art program. It was a small black school in the South. I don't recall the name, but that's even today's world. They don't have, they might have an art class, but not an art major in some of the black schools. They're still trying to grow, basically. So, but I got there and I was a pet, it was four of us, and we were pets as black, as black, as black artists, young black artists, and they were just trying out integration. This was 1964. Okay, so the history of that period was such, and it was across the street from the White House. That's where the Corcoran is.
Right.
It's right, well, the executive office building, but then right beside that is the White House.
Right.
So I'm looking, what the hell am I doing down here? And as a junior high school student, we couldn't go downtown without being asked, "What's your business down here?" As a black person, and my parents wanted me to don't go downtown. Now there's a whole discussion, but people know Washington D.C. You couldn't go below Rhode Island Avenue, without being, asked, "What's your business down here?" So
even though you lived in Northwest, right?
That's right, and that's that we lived, not to get into that kind of discussion, but we lived in compartments in DC. You had, Southeast was compartmentalized. You had, far Northeast, and you had my, which was the Howard area. Basically, I grew up around Howard all my life, except at one point I was born in Northeast, and then when I was an infant, we moved over to Northwest and so forth. But also, this is where your viewers reference Kenyon Street, which was where the Kenyon Bar and Grill is. That was, that's funny. I used to go there, yeah, I used to. But that was the Black Gold Coast. You couldn't go above Kenyon Street. And my parents actually helped to integrate above that area. And of course, whites left. And then we couldn't go beyond 16th Street. And we couldn't go beyond Rhode Island Avenue, I believe, or something like that. But there were specific areas where there was a black area. Nothing in far northwest. In other words, nothing beyond Rock Creek Park could be black. Now Georgetown had a history of having black servants. They serviced the area, so they allowed blacks to live in those little tiny houses that you see now. People, whites moving in and renovating, but those were the servant houses because you had estates in Georgetown.
Right.
And then major houses and then major estates with, horses could ride on. But anyway, that's some of the history. But that's the history I grew up in. And I love my history though. Even though I've studied it and found out how strange it was like it was really nice being around my people and having the different cultures, almost like on the continent of Africa. You have Nigeria and Ghana right next to each other, but you have these language differences and cultural differences and cultural sharing, and so it was valuable as I study it now. So and you have choices. You have many choices of being black, of being of African descent, as you know, as a Puerto Rican. Okay.
Anderson, how did you get into stained glass work?
Well, I got into it. Well, I got into public art in general through stained glass.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my mentors, Robert J. Nash, an architect who, among other things, designed over 100 churches in his career. He's now an ancestor. But he was the husband at the time of Texera Nash. And I had her at Howard. She was in graduate school working with Mr.
Meaning she was a teacher?
No, she was a student getting her graduate degree back in 1965. I'm sorry. Yeah, 65, actually. And they had these stacked classes, they called it. They had undergraduates with graduates.
Right.
And So I met her through that class, and we didn't, eventually went into business together. But she was one of these people who were secretly mentoring. What I mean by that, she was working behind the scenes to advance my career. That's the simple way of saying it.
Mm-hmm.
She was very articulate, very much involved in the political side. She was a great administrator, a great writer, and she wrote grants and she did other things. And she would do something like, well, she did something like this example, which is she was in the mix and she would say, why don't you apply for this? You know, she was working in government, working in private industry, working in those white circles where, the money was flowing. And so she knew what was coming up. And people were saying, oh, we got to do something for these black people before they go crazy. And so, she said, yeah, try this out, apply for this. And then I applied. I said, okay, I can, but they ain't going to do. So then they selected me for a project. And I said, wow, isn't this great? And she said, yeah, congratulations and so forth. But she was
And
working for.
this was a public art project?
This was, let me see, artist in residence for the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, which is something she actually started, and talked Marion Barry into doing it. Now that my history comes to my mind. And so you had an artist that went into, I think I was the second or third person chosen. They had one every year, and then they cut it out. And that's a big mistake. But anyway, yeah, and we eventually, after that process, went into business together. And she again wrote a grant and got the money, and we had a house as a studio, and we invited other artists to come in and do, printmaking, because that's what our first association was. And her love was printmaking. And so Winston Kennedy, Frank Smith, and them came in, but we were the owners of the business. It was called Ant's Hill. That's her suggestion. But Ant, meaning Anderson, A-N, and her name was Texer, T-X. So she said, Ant's Hill. This is Ant's Hill and Ant's Hill.
What kind of business was this?
It was art building. It was a business on doing printmaking, black printmakers.
Nice.
And I thought it was corny as hell, but she wrote the grant. So I mean, and we had a brand. Anybody know printmakers? She had a brand etching press to put in there, and I paid the rent. The grant paid the rent, and it was amazing.
And where was this located?
On Georgia Avenue, Georgia Avenue, and maybe Arkansas, something like that. Yeah, and that's ourselves, and she talked to the owner and got the owner. She was a real serious business person. She knew how to go out there and talk to people. She had a slight New England accent, which is sometimes, a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, she was very black, though. What I mean by that, you could say Doxy, but just really undercover black. She was out there amongst the enemy. That's what I said. And I won't articulate that point, but
you don't have to articulate that one.
Yeah.
So tell me, was Jeff Donaldson the chair at the point where you were the first go around? No. That was later, right?
No, that was later. He actually, well, I'm jumping ahead because you asked me to talk about the protest thing, and but he asked me to stay as a student when I said I'm out of here.
Right.
That's basically, but I helped to get him in, but I didn't know who he was. I didn't know his history. I hadn't studied his history, and but I'm trying to make this make sense because I'm jumping around. But 2 years later, after I left, he gave me a one-man show in the gallery, and then year after that, he asked me to join Africobra. So let me go back though.
So yes, I want you to focus. Tell me about the protest real quick.
Okay. Akili focusing. That's I don't know about that one. But yeah, okay. The protest was okay. I'm still this shy guy.
Right.
Sound like somebody's song. But anyway, producing. People saw me producing. Okay,
Right.
and, they saw me working large. I was
Right.
working large. I was doing 12 by 20 paintings. You know, foot. And placing them in the taking up all the room in the painting room. And anyway, and they were black people in some instances suffering. I was dealing with black assassination, um, and I was dealing with the riots and so forth, with
Right.
police car, white policemen, and and the black community being well. That's the concept of the piece. But anyway, so people liked it. It was apropos at the time, and then I heard this march, people marching in front of Douglas Hall, which is right adjacent to the Fine Arts Building. I said, that's interesting to me. You know, my definition of interesting, this is one of the few things my students have to uh, memorize is worthy of further investigation.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting. So I went over and I got interested. Okay. And I'm very affected by great speeches. And people like Rap Brown, Stokely Carmichael, also Kwame Ture, that's his other name. Muhammad Ali would come on the steps of the Douglas Hall
Mm-hmm.
because people at that time they heard about stuff happening in Howard, or they knew Howard was a black school, and they said, "What are y'all doing, black?" And so they would come. Bayard Rustin, who was organizing the March on Washington with King, just came and sat on the grass and talk. They would just come into Howard and look at students and say, "Do you recognize me?" Or "This is who I am. What are y'all planning on doing with the march?" And we heard about y'all doing this. So all this, Rap Brown was playing football on the football field, that kind of stuff I remember seeing. So you couldn't help but look out the window if you were in class, and then you heard stuff, and so anyway, I investigated because it was worthy.
Right.
And so I went over and listened and was completely enthralled. I'm saying completely. I was shaking, to hear black speak. I'm gonna call it that. You know, uh, not speech, black speak. And I believe that's somebody else's term, but I'm gonna use it. And so I was thrilled to hear my people, my story being told on the steps of Douglas Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And other great people have been on those steps, not with the same intention, but I'm saying King when they had graduation and when he was honored as a major speaker and so forth.
And so what happened on that day? What happened after you were after you got there and you were
I
enthralled?
went to everyone I heard of. I said, I got to see another. I got to get this.
So that's what had you.
So-and-so was speaking, and I'm saying, and I was at every conference. I was everything I heard of. I said, wow, what are these people about? Where did they come from? And the last thing I'll hit to be concentrating, as you're saying, is that people came to recruit specifically.
Mm.
Talking about the minister of the Nation of Islam for the DC area would come and sit on the steps with me and talk about one. Have you ever considered being a? And I told him I didn't like wearing bow ties, and that's what they were wearing at the time, or suits, so that matter. It's too hot, And then I like my new beard I got here. Don't you see this? And so, jokingly, but I'm saying I considered Mosque number 4 down on New Jersey Avenue. That's right. And then the Black Panthers, of course, were there. And hey, brother, you got this beard. And I had an earring at the time. And unfortunately, the whole coats. That's the only reason I don't have it now. But I didn't know what it meant. I just thought it looked militant at the time. Militancy was the idea. I didn't even know the definition of the word. But I said I wanted to be blacker. I had to get blacker, and the history being taught. Kwame Ture started the comic book, then would come. Somehow they let him come into an auditorium, and oh my goodness, I mean, he talked for a long time. So did Farrakhan. Farrakhan came at another point, but they banned him from campus, I believe. I don't know how they did that under the present state of the Constitution. I mean, freedom of speech is still. But anyway, you left shaking. These are master speech fans. And even though, as I, really investigated what they were saying, and I disagreed with some of it was like exciting, and I said, I got to get my rap together a little bit, because I'm not sharp enough yet. I'm just stumbling over words and so forth. So I actually practiced a little bit, how to really articulate a little bit better. And then at another point, I was teaching. I had to, you get the facts, you got to be telling the truth, and you have to know how to deliver it, and so forth. So yeah, and I got involved, and then all of a sudden, after the takeover of the main building, which was all over the news, all over the country, the first, not this first black, the first school taking over buildings at university. People don't realize that.
Right. So Howard was the first. And
Yeah.
what were the reasons that they took over? Do you remember those?
Yeah. It was silly. I'm saying not silly, but silly and simple. I remember I read a few years ago, I found a document and from Fine Arts, and it was like on there, in addition to everything else, was not enough toilet paper. Okay. And it was like all these issues of the world, and that was on our mind. But see, that's the problem. The administration, they become jaded, if I can use that word, in their views, and they don't appreciate the little things. And if they dealt with the little things, if this last thing with Howard, with people's living conditions, they just don't want, they want cleanliness. They want, they weren't talking about world issues at first. And then when they sat down, the students, the same thing we did. Well, wait a minute, there are all these serious issues around the world. And we started studying what's happening in Africa. At that time, we had gotten through a few free countries. When I say few, from colonialism, but Africa had been taken over by European, and we weren't even talking about that. At least most of us. And then we started studying, and speakers started coming and said, "Did you realize what's happening in these countries, and not all over the world really?" And but because we were black of African descent, they were talking about that. And then of course Southern Africa really was the major talk at that time. And but it took us 100 years from colonialism to get blacks in government positions, and we didn't realize it. But so we started studying Kwame Nkrumah and what he had done in Ghana. And he really, I'm not going to get into this discussion, but he really wanted what he called the United States of Africa, which is an interesting thing to look at. That was his pitch in terms of the bold title above his whole thing. And, there was some movement towards that. At one point, Senegal and Gambia became Senegambia. I don't know if people know that history. But anyway, I'm not going to go down that avenue right now either. But it's cooperation with some of these governments. And although what we have to understand is that this is our first chance after colonialism. So we've been brainwashed and missionary and so forth throughout Africa. And so it's going to take several generations. Okay, same thing with us here in America. As anxious as I got, once I got the information, once I found out about COINTELPRO and how they implanted, once I found out when Malcolm X was assassinated that one of his bodyguards was a New York policeman,
right,
undercover, and he admitted so. The policeman did. He was black and he was guilty, and he was guilt ridden, I guess you might say. But anyway, J. Edgar Hoover and his stuff, and how they, infiltrated people to destroy our fledgling Black organization. And so even NAACP and so forth. So it's you got this history, and you say, wow, these people can't be that bad. And then you got the proof, and it was corroborated. Then it was like, well, must be some decent white people out there. And so, you begin to investigate. You say, okay, there are some people that are doing stuff, and they were our age for the most part. And so you saw them reaching out to us, and that was respect. And I think that's what most Black people want, is respect. And so there was some of that going on, but we told them when they came to Howard, this is a Black thing. We are in control of our movement, is what we said. We had a lot of people wanted to align with us and so forth. But the
So
Black groups,
what did you actually do, Anderson?
well, when the Fine Arts Building became its turn, because I said that way because pretty much every building was occupied in succession, or there was actually competition for students to take over a building during
Wow.
that period of about 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Not just the A building, we call it administration building. After the students left that, then they said, well, we having trouble here in fine arts. Or in the, they called it the new building at that time. It was the Lock Hall, now it's called. Anyway, that's the main liberal arts area, they call it. I guess you call it another name now. But so it was fine arts turn, and so to speak. And so I said, yeah, I was over at the, in fact, I was doing security at the A building. I stood at the door and checked people's stuff if I knew them or whatever, because I was in the mix. I was a big party goer. And that was not because I liked partying that much. I was trying to stretch out my personality and see what was happening. So anyway, I knew where all the parties were. People knew me, and I knew them, and so I could identify if it was somebody like undercover. Okay, for the most part, and so I did that, and people saw me active as an artist, but they also saw me as an activist in the movement because they saw my face around. And so when we left there, which I was actually against, because I said, what did we get? And they said, well, they promised us. And I said, really? But I wasn't in leadership, so that's cool. And then it was fine. So we went back to class, and then people said, we're going to take on the files because we're not getting what we need. So whatever the issue was. And there were a lot of issues that were real, besides this toilet paper, of course, and which I mentioned earlier about that was on the list. And and yeah, it was a lot of things like furniture, like just easels, and a teacher to teach thus and so, and why aren't we learning this and so forth, and just being observant and expression. They administrators were like, you're not an administrator, well, you're just a student. That was attitude. It was condescending, which is the worst thing to do with students protesting anything, is to be condescending. And in other words, disrespectful, saying, that's not your business to be in that. You're just a student, sort of thing. And so that pissed me off. First of all, I mean, I'm mad now. I'm not just learning, I'm mad. So I did the same thing. Security, I stood at the door, and said, when people were trying to get in and say who you, or a student who was like coming, they saw the crowd, nobody's in class, and they said, I got to get to class. I said, the teacher's not in the class. They heard the news. They stay at home. What are you going to do? I'm going to go up there anyway. That kind of attitude. So I said, well, go ahead. Just sitting there by yourself. So, but anyway, I was at the front. Here's the reason I set that story up. Is because at one point, after a few days, the dean, and I'm not going to call his name because I don't want to deal. He's an ancestor too. I don't want to disparage his name, his family name. So anyway, he's the dean, and he walked by. I saw him. He saw me, and it was definitely, he wasn't happy because I was on scholarship. I worked in the gallery. I worked under my chair, James A. Porter, to open up the gallery. They trusted me with the keys to do, basic work, to run errands, whatever. That was my scholarship, to work under him in the gallery. Okay. They even trusted me with the keys to open up the gallery on Saturdays and such. And so anyway, I was docile, I guess, at that point, not unthreatening, non-threatening. And but anyway, he saw me standing up there, and he frowned, and then he saw some other people, and then we were served with what's called TRO, temporary restraining order. And what happened there was I was identified as one of the leaders. Farthest away from leadership, I didn't even consider leadership ideas. I was like a follower. I was a great follower. Let me listen to what you're saying. That makes sense. I'm with you. That was who I was. Okay. Actually, I'm still there, but people keep asking me to leave. And so I do it. But I'm really seeking to be a great follower. Let me hear and see leadership. And I'm still doing that as I'm employed up here at Howard today.
So
let me just say, temporary restraining order. I was served. You have to be served by the judicial system. They send somebody. They identified you. Here, sir, and then you have to show up for court because you have illegally occupied this building. And what they did was they picked one person from each department: art, music, theater. All right. And they served them for temporary restraining order. And we had to go to court. And I said, y'all figuring on trying to throw me out of school? Is that what's happening? So I knew yes, but I was hurt. I was really hurt because I was a high performing student. I know that because I just love learning. I love working. I love being there. I love the people. I love my teachers, my fellow students, of course. So, at that point, I knew I wouldn't do to graduate. And I said, I'm out of here. I'm going. I finished school that year. And it even obsesses me now.
So you mean you finished out that year?
Finished out that year.
Right.
But okay. I didn't graduate.
Right.
I knew I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do the graduate. One reason I wouldn't do the graduate because I took the classes I wanted to take. My students need not hear this, but I was just a learning machine. I would walk down the hallway and say, I'm gonna take this class from this person because it looks interesting. And so after I took all of Lois Jones' class, I said, wait a minute, I want to take some graphic arts from Wells. I want to take some painting and sculpture from Ed Love. And this person looks interesting. What do they teach? And so I was teaching all out of sequence and all out of, I actually took a couple of classes twice, because I like working with the teacher, and so you don't get 2 grades for that. If you decide to do that, you just did it. And but anyway,
and Anderson, so now move up to oh God, your introduction to Africobra, please.
Okay, well that fits because after we got what we wanted, basically they said we're gonna hire a new chair of the Africobra. And they did it. I didn't research them. I wasn't that intellectual at that time. Research is key, of course. And they said, this is new chair. I said, well, cool. I hope y'all do well, but I'm out. I'm not coming back to this place. They tried to put me in jail, and so, and they hurt my feelings. I told people that. I said, I had to go home. And then the other thing was that after I didn't go to school, I was immediately drafted to go to Vietnam. And I saw my brothers in my neighborhood coming back from that, if they came back. Many of them didn't. And I said, well, I'm not going to Vietnam. And so that was another story. And they drafted me several times. When I say it that way, they kept sending me these notices when I didn't go down. And then I went down there and said, I will corrupt your entire army. That's what I told him. I told the head of it, which was black guy, the head of black guy, they hidden it at the time. And then I told him my father was a military veteran. He spent all his life and died in the military. I was born at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. But anyway, I said, well, no, I'm not doing that. And if I'm in, it's not going to be a good influence on your soldiers that you want to. And so I didn't hear from him anymore. Some of that to this day, but I sweated in my bed, that they were going to come and arrest me and put me in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of going to Canada. Anyway, that was for maybe a year. I mean, I was just distraught because they did come. They come today to get me, and they didn't. So, and here I am. And then now history says that was a bad war, and they wasted the lives of many, soldiers and so forth, and they lost it. They lost it too. And Vietnam is thriving. So that's what history teaches you. That's what age teaches you when you live through history. I try to tell my students that all the time. I say, well, what I'm telling you to believe is what I lived through. Okay, so I left, and then Donaldson said, "Wow, because he knew I was instrumental in him coming."
Right.
And then I found out later from a former chair who's now ancestor. I keep calling these ancestors. Wow. But anyway, Floyd Coleman, he told me that they were working on getting me back to finish, the two of them. And Dawson knew I was involved, and he knew my background with an institution called Watoto School, Nation House, which is the group that grew out of the Nation Performing Group, by the way.
I was wondering that when you first mentioned nations. Yeah.
Yeah, Nation. The word Nation House came from Nation. It was called Nation African Liberation Arts Ensemble because it was a performing ensemble of different disciplines. That was the concept. And then we said, and some of us were starting families and said, well, where are we going to send our children? And so we decided to start an educational institution, and very successful. And I'm saying that as one of the founders, very proud of it, And so there are many, and I say that because of the products of that institution and their lives as they have grown into maturity. They're doing quite well. And so we performed as fundraising. We never got paid for our performances because all that money we made from records, we performed 2 records with Hakeem Mahfoudi, also known as Donnell Lee, New York, who's done all kind of books. And he has a publishing company and a school in Chicago. And so that was our source of revenue to do performances, and all that money went into developing the school. And of course, it was art focused, but academically, rich also. But all of us, many of us, most of us were artists, who started the school, but it was an academic school as well. So anyway, okay, you focus me now.
Jeff, how did you become introduction to, so Jeff Donaldson was an artist from Chicago, correct?
Yeah, he reached out to me. He was researching, which is he's a doctor of philosophy and research again. So he was moved to a new city, and so he was researching people and researching the history of the movement at Howard, which is why he was brought there. Very progressive and the right person for the job.
Mm-hmm.
And so
didn't he also bring a movement with him because he initiated?
Well, he did hire for the positions that were open people he was familiar with, most of which were members of Africobra. And
right.
That's
what was the name of the mural movement that he initiated? in Chicago. I can't recall it.
Well, it wasn't such a movement, but the wall you're referring to is a wall of
All of
respect.
respect. Thank you. Well, it transformed into, at least in my opinion, the actions of that group of artists transformed into movements, and how they uplifted communities throughout.
Well, that's a perfect description of what did happen. Many movements don't know they're movement until
Right.
it follows it.
Exactly.
And so I did a paper on that actually for class, and imagine at that time that you could be shot. If you know Chicago, that they are very aggressive people against Black people in that area.
Right.
So to have the bravery to get on a scaffolding and paint Black faces was life threatening. And I say that with no exaggeration. For them to have paint as their weapon and other people looking at it and saying, we don't like the other ethnic groups, and whites is who I'm referring to. And so, it was an act of bravery, and I don't even deal with that with aesthetics. When I look at it, I don't look at it as, is this good art or not? I don't deal with that. I mean, I like what they chose. I like techniques, and mural painting is especially. These were, canvas artists and so forth. And so they had a vision, but you have to be trained for every area of expertise. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say I don't like it aesthetically. I'm just trying to say when I look at it, I look at, wow, the experience, how could they have the bravery? Because you're looking at the wall and then you have to look behind your back and turn around. Somebody watching me, the police rolling around the corner. That was all a reality. I mean, you had what's his name, Daley, he was he was, Trump before Trump, But anyway, it was that kind of experience. And then the money, they coming out of their pockets. You had to, that's a lot of paint to put on a wall. You buy stuff, and so forth. And then you have a job. You have to spend your spare time from your family. I mean, there's all kind of dynamics that goes along with that kind of expression. So yeah, the bravery and the goal, I guess you might say, white people might say, to paint Black people on walls, and then a movement,
how did it come that he asked you to be a part of Africobra, and then explain what Africobra is, please?
Well, it's a acronym for the African Commune of Black Relevant Artists. Or I'm trying to think, because the name was played with Black Revolutionary. Yeah, it was played with, but I think it ended up being relevant artists. Language is so very important. Because when you say revolutionary, it's like most people don't know what a revolution is. First of all, they say, "Oh, this is revolutionary art." No, but anyway, and so, but it was designed to make a statement, and that's and I'm talking about in terms of articulating the name, and that's the name of it. That's the reason of the acronym. In other words, when you spell it out, Africobra.
Right, because I can't remember which one it was, but I remember being at Howard when I was there and being in the studio, and I can't remember which member was telling me that it was first pronounced Africobra, or they were considering it to be pronounced in that way.
That was probably Napoleon Jones.
It was Napoleon, yes. Yeah.
So because
at that point, when it began, it was whom?
You mean the name?
Yes, when the group was cultivated, who was it at that point?
I wasn't there. It was. I joined as a member in Washington when Jeff moved here. He recruited people, and let me say this: he was the leader.
Right.
Okay, and he brought the names to the group. This is my experience, but he wanted certain people that he had studied, and looked at. And
Mm-hmm.
so he promoted them in a meeting. This is my experience when I was in meeting, and he was talking about new members, and everybody looked around and they said, "Yeah," because he did, you know, 90% of the work that I saw administratively and making calls, and then his position at Howard, he integrated Africobra within the Howard art department, and then the dean's office when he uh, came into the deanship. You know, he had his secretaries working on Africobra stuff and everything. I can say that now because he's not there anymore. but with the reality, as well as the North American Zone president for the FESTAC, which was the only the second international uh, 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 congregation of Black artists in history. Okay, and the first one has such as Duke Ellington and so forth. And
Mm-hmm.
they say Senegal or Senegal did that one. Nigeria struck oil, and they had all this money, so they could bring people there from all over the world, which is what they did.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about billions of dollars. I mean, when you went over there, oil was flowing in the streets. What I mean by that, big pipes that were four feet in circumference or diameter, I guess you might say. But going down the streets, they were pumping oil out so fast. Everybody was driving big cars. Everybody, buildings were being built, and they were spending money. Most government officials had lear jets. I'm saying billions of dollars. I don't know what the situation is now, but here it's, it's
So what year was that when you were asked to be a part of Africa?
77. Oh, what year? 70. Man, I gotta look at my resume. But it was shortly after I left. It was
Okay.
72, 71 maybe.
And so how did that shift your own perception and narrative around your own work? How did being a part of that group at that point do that for you? Or did it? Well, I know it did. So
Of course, yeah. I was validated
in what way?
in a way of these are consummate professionals with a successful organization. And here I am coming out of school as a rebel. What am I to do? I was actually hired, um, and I thought life was kind of easy as artist. I'm gonna be quite serious because Texera, who I mentioned, I was in the studio. Some people were buying my work, not incredibly so, but you know, um, I was hired and getting paid well, and people were calling me. You know what I mean? I was like maybe trying to be a revolutionary or something because that's how bad I thought it had gotten, which it was bad. But then I had to make a living, and so people hired me, and I was making a good living. And so at one point, I think I had two studios. I did because I was hired as artist in resident, and they give you a studio in a school. And then Texera and I had the house as a studio. So it was like I had to work hard just to justify having two studios, spaces. And then they buy your materials too with the DC Commission on Arts and Humanities. But the only thing about that, I was looking to be a rebel, and I was getting all this money from the government. Not only that, working for the Kennedy Center. When the Kennedy Center was being built, they contacted me, and I think it was Peggy Cooper Capers and that group of people who were she's very similar to Texera in the sense of being entrepreneurial and raising money and being able to handle those people.
Mm-hmm.
But so my thing was that you say something stupid, I'm about to go street on you. I tell people, I said, that's disrespectful, and, you don't talk to me like that. And they say, well, I didn't know. I'm talking about how white people talk to black people
Right.
in situations. But anyway, I had experience with it. And then people like Cooper and Michael Malone, and they could run interference for me in the sense of, don't disrespect this man, kind of thing.
So
So, no, go ahead.
okay, so I gotta jump forward just a little bit. So
Sure.
tell me about your involvement in Black Artists of DC.
Well,
Your opinion of, not opinion of it. Yeah, I can start with your involvement.
let me, I'm gonna answer that for sure. Let me start you with the National Conference of Artists, which is a conference that for decades.
Right.
So, and I hadn't served for the last, maybe 10 years or 15 years or something. But that's where I met Black artists from all over the country. And I'm talking about anybody who was somebody in Black arts came to that conference. And DC had its chapter, and it was one of the strongest chapters I found out eventually. And so I got very busy with them, very interested in NCA, and I traveled to as many as I could afford to travel to in terms of time and money, and met just great people. I mean, other Black artists from California, even the Caribbean came. It's amazing how we let that go. I'm gonna just say that as a critique. But at that time, it was very rich, and I became rich with in my experience. I'm saying rich in terms of my spirit.
Yeah.
Information. And so 1 year, or actually 2 years, I was the chair. I was the co-chair 1 year and the chair of the conference another year. Now, it's a big commitment, and I actually worked without pay. I wasn't expecting to get paid, but it ended up being a full-time job. And we had a great conference here. And that, I say all of that because you're asking about Black Arts in DC to reflect on the point. I wanted that experience again. That's why I put in the kind of energy that I had previous to going to Howard, because Howard is an all-consuming job. And so it's difficult to be active. But Black Arts DC gave me that feeling again, the potential of organizing amongst ourselves. And it's not against any other group of people.
Right.
It's just that we need this to, to do specifically what we need. And so it's really to integrate into the art world, but not necessarily be integrated as a person. I'm gonna just make that a general statement. Okay, and so I put a lot of energy into it, and I can't do it now because I remember telling us, because your history as former president is that it's energy is limited. And my age, I'm a proud 76 as of today, and but the reality is that
You say as of today, as in today's your birthday?
no.
Oh,
But,
we did say as of today.
Well, okay, I'll change if you can accept my mistake. That I'm 77 in February 19th, 2023.
Right. I was like, I knew your birthday was earlier. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Well, you interrupt my flow there, you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
No,
I did.
I'm just kidding. But because this is your job to coordinate this stuff, right? To keep me on flow and in rhythm. So Black Arts DC is very dear to me. The last meeting was, as it always is, it's always, I don't know if this is designed to be a complimentary statement. So
Right.
let me just say it, is that, sometimes I say, oh, Black Arts DC, I'm very familiar. And then we have the meeting and I'm amazed. I'm amazed at how much goes on.
Right.
And I shouldn't be amazed because of history. Now, Aziza Gibson, I should call her name out because she's one of the originators of the group,
Right.
and I can't call off the other people's names right off, but she had a meeting in her house.
I thought it was Viola Leak, and I can't remember the third woman. I can see her face, but I can't remember her name.
Right. Yeah, and that's why I sometimes hesitate now when I start calling names because, but Aziza certainly, whenever she's in the room, she is pivotal. If you think of a wheel, she is the hub, and that's how this meeting was handled. This recent meeting, and she was had a very great speaker when she had arranged for.
Yeah.
And anyway, talking about FTNs, or what is it called now? It's something new on the internet stuff with FTNs where you can produce stuff.
Oh, yes. NFTs.
NFTs. Okay, yeah. And I forget what it stands for, but anyway, this wonderful Black woman gave on any topic. I can't
Right.
call it, but she was extremely articulate. You can be articulate and not knowledgeable. She was both, and I queried her on becoming in, a to teaching or to have some enterprise, and she was just so, you know, just genuine, and I'm trying to find the word for it. But anyway, she would just want to share that she had studied it, and this is what her studies have shown. And I mean, she just so smooth. I was very tired that day, and I couldn't I didn't want to stop talking. It was pretty amazing. So anyway, I've talked to a few whites who have contacted me. I do talk to white people. A lot of people think I hate white people. I don't hate white people. I love Black people. Okay, and but I do. People reach out to me and have done things for me.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it. And so, but you know,
What
uh,
made you say that, Anderson? What were you thinking of that made you?
because people things I've said, and when I bring up issues of racism and so-called white supremacy, even though I don't use that term really, because it uses supremacy in the phrase.
Mm-hmm.
But any kind of thing that is to let people know when they've said something that's offensive to you.
Yeah.
I mean, some white people will say to you, and you think they're friendly, they'll say, "Oh, my nigga, how you doing?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, okay, I've heard them say that to other people, but you can't say that to me. You have to understand that you just, because I know you just dodged a slap in the face, or maybe a fist. And, but, that's a whole discussion because I don't like being reactionary. In other words, I like doing business. And so I'm standing in front of people. You mentioned public art. You have to stand in front of a panel. In many cases, it's mostly whites, maybe all whites.
Mm-hmm.
And here you are, a Black person, and you're trying to do Black imagery or something that is, I mean, accepted by all people. But see, people respect when you respect yourself. People respect you the most when you respect yourself. And a lot of Blacks don't understand that. And so we don't promote ourselves. And see, panels say, well, we don't think that's going to work. You have another idea. And you decide, well, yeah, I have many ideas. And so they might not want something that has a Black fist in it. But Black culture is much more than a Black fist, and they want abstraction. We invented abstraction. Look at African fabric, and the other expression, African jewelry. And so there are many ways of being Black, and you have to understand what environment you work in. You want your work to last. And I'm saying this to all public artists, is that you have to know how to be in charge when somebody else thinks they're in charge. and that's called finesse. And you have to understand how to be successful so that image stays up, it's protected, it stays clean, it's done in pride. People work for it, put you in the press or the media, and you want it to be a lasting document. So that takes that kind of training and understanding. There's one way you stand up and you can curse somebody out. It's another way of slapping somebody on the back and saying, "Look, let's make this happen." You know, and it's to your benefit as well as theirs. So that's what I've learned with public art. But because I work for churches a lot, let me say you ask me about public. Let me say before we move on though, but the churches are what the and you know what? I cut that one short. Let me say this. Going back to the Nashes, Texan Nash, her husband put me into a church project, and that started my whole public art career. Churches spend a lot of money.
Specifically in murals and
English,
glasswork,
yeah,
stained
but
glass,
but
right?
it started with plaster work. Because
Mm,
the church had an un, unfortunate fire, and the columns, the tops of the columns in the church, had burnt off. They had one column, that didn't burn, and I casted that column, and I put them on all the rest of the 9 or so columns, and they loved it so much they gave me a bonus, which is unheard of in construction trades, for it because they couldn't find a person to do it, and they were highly satisfied with the project and confident of my ability. And here's the story, real quick. As they
I was
say,
trying
"Well,
to
we
get
got
you to talk about Howard first before you talk about this story, because we only got 20 minutes.
okay, okay."
Can you talk,
So
can you talk about getting back to how you
yeah,
got back to being
I'll
a
just
professor at
wrap this story up because this actually came out after that. But in any event, uh, they said, "Oh, I did that. They gave me a bonus." Okay, after I finished, and then they said, "Wow, we have to repair or redo these stained glass windows because they burn too." And they said, "Can you do this?" Okay, I want your audience to hear me. Can you do this? And I said, "Yes, I can." But in my head, I said to myself, I didn't lie because I've never done it.
Right.
But yes, I can. Okay, and so in 2 years, they said I studied for 2 years straight stained glass windows. All right, and and then I got the contract. So anyway, back to where are we now? Back to Howard.
How you got to how you got to Howard to be a professor,
Oh, okay, so yeah, I went back to get the degree to finish up that story with my mother's delight, and I told her, and this is after actually my successful public art career. I had some money to pay tuition, and then I had some time
Mm-hmm.
because the contractor, this Prince George's County, they put off. They had a fire. Yeah, they had an unfortunate fire, and and the Duval wing, which was they were renovating the Prince George's courthouse, major building in their architectural listing, and and a 6-figure contract, I must say. I had to say that, and so they don't just throw those out to everybody. Frankly, Martha Jackson Jarvis has a major thing, and she's a Howard graduate in the same building. I'll go on the other side. Anyway, I had time, and I
Right.
said, okay, I'm gonna go back. I went to my mother's house. I said, "Mom, I'm going back to school," and she was just, I don't know. She was delighted. I'm trying to think if she cried, and both of us are criers. We cry easily. But so she was satisfied, and this might sound sad, but I think she actually decided to pass away. That was the last thing she needed to rest in peace.
Mm.
That sounds sad even to me at this moment, but she passed, and she didn't get the chance to see me walk across the stage because I walked across twice. Why did I say that? Because I earned a bachelor's, which was the only requirement she had, I said, look, I'm here. I might as well go and get the master's, you know. And so I stayed long enough to get the master's. And so they had me to walk across the stage and line out the graduates. And I walked across and received my bachelor's. And then they said, okay, you got to get back in line because you're about to get the master's. So, and I earned both, by the way. I don't want to make it seem like they were gifts. And matter of fact, my chairs, David Smedley and Floyd Coleman, said, look, you got to, people are going to be thinking we gifting you this, so you got to be squeaky clean, getting your classes. So I worked and I got on the dean's list and all that kind of stuff. Made A's, in other words. So where you telling me to go to?
I want you to talk about how you then came back to actually be a professor.
Oh, okay. After I graduated,
Right.
said Dr. Gwendolyn Everett, she said, I'm trying to think. She said, I have a proposal for you, and that's the way she put it. That's why I was thinking for a second. I said, oh, really? What's happening? And because I never thought about even applying because there was some resistance. I'm going to just say that like that. But she was the chair, and she said, we have a position here. And she ran down the, salary and all the other things and what she wanted me to teach. And I said, yeah, sure. Sounds like fun. Those words, I think I said, because I've taught. I taught at Duke Ellington.
Right.
I talk about that. I was the first chair at Duke Ellington, and designed the program and so forth. So and had a wonderful time until some people acting stupid with the, I can't say names, and also I don't like talking bad about people nowadays. So but anyway, and that program is flourishing, so that's great. And but I was the first chair. I designed the program for the art department.
Right.
And so I was available to take that job. And so I've been there ever since. And that's been like what, right after I graduated was 2008, 2009, I think I started, yeah. So enjoyed myself thoroughly. The students are wonderful, and I just really have enjoyed it at this part of my life. I think that I'm doing a great job, and they tell me that, at least. They gave me a teacher award this year, the administration, and then the students um, celebrate my birthday every year. That's amazing to me. I didn't ask them. I think one year I hinted because I got used to it. But anyway, no, and they are doing quite well. That's the idea. They work, in my estimation, but they're making a living, being artists and what they want to do. So that's amazing. And
So tell me real quick, how has teaching evolved for you?
well, evolve. I'm able to listen more to students and to feel more from students, and that has made me sharper and more attentive to my continuing learning as a teacher. And so now students are more and more every year is more personal. As a matter of fact, I continue relationships after graduation, which is a lot of work that I enjoy. But as you can imagine, you get new students every year. Okay. So, but then I'm getting calls from graduates. This is happening. Can you look at my work? What do you think? What do you think about that guy I was dating? Whatever is going on, and or guess when I'm pregnant, or guess what kind of conversation. And, just yesterday, somebody called, and then I have a few people that I call and check in on because I'm concerned about them. I'm concerned about all of them, of course, but I mean, they graduated with issues, and I'm saying, how's that issue going? How's it going? So I spend a lot of time doing it, but it's gratifying. And
Yeah.
to me, it feeds me. And to your question, it informs my teaching because, okay, what I did with that person, with that student, has worked out to be thus. Because 2 or 3 years after they graduated, what I taught them or what we discussed was important to their development, or
Mm.
not, or not. Maybe I told them the wrong thing, but and I won't repeat that. But then when they say, "Wow, that meant so much to me," and so funny thing about that is that at this age now, I'm thinking about what happened to me in elementary school. You know, um, how could I forget her name? But anyway, my sixth grade teacher pulled out some brown wrapping paper, gave me some tempera paint, and told me to paint the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria because that was in the curriculum that you had to teach them about these white folks coming over to,
Mm.
colonizate the Americans.
Yeah.
And she was just doing her job, and she was taught that, but she had me painting a mural, which is tantamount to doing public art in the class.
Mhm.
Isn't that amazing? You
And
know, and it took, I mean, for her to put that seed in me that decades later I would be doing public art
mm,
based on a piece of brown wrapping paper and tempera paint.
mm,
Incredible.
it is. It is.
So,
So we
Miss
have,
Allen, Allen, Mrs. Allen.
I was wondering if you were going to remember her name. So we have about 10 minutes. I want you to talk about the works that were the what is it called? Oh, it's not a frieze. The sculptural works that was recently, not
Oh,
recently,
oh,
but in the last 3 years it was discovered, right?
yeah. It was uncovered because I knew where it was.
Mm.
I knew it had been covered up
Right.
by the Mormon Church, who bought it from a small Baptist church who had the vision to do a, well, they wanted a painting originally. I said, you know what, I really want to do the sculpture because I hadn't done it, but we had to use painting money for the sculpture. I say that because it takes a lot of money to do a sculpture as opposed to a painting, a lot more money.
Right.
But I wanted to do it. I wanted to have it in my portfolio because sculpture was I majored when I came back to Howard, but it was also my introduction into art. A lot of people don't realize that, but when I was young, that's what I did with sculpture. I'm talking about, junior high school or something. So, yeah, and so the head custodian from Duke Ellington was a member of the church, and he recommended me to the church and said, I got this guy who he was at Duke Ellington, me, speaking to me. And so, yeah, we spoke, and I said, look, the other thing is my mother lives right around the corner, which is true. She, it's like, what do you call it, perpendicular to the church. All
Mm.
right. And and then my buddies, I went to a church a couple of blocks further, but my best friend's parents and family went to that particular church, New Home Baptist Church. So they had the vision of doing the Last Supper, what some people call the Lord's Supper. And I said, well, we do all know that these were people of color, right? I don't think we use that term. I think I said these black people, these people that were right adjacent to the continent of Africa. So how are they going to be what we generally see? And we had some people that said, yeah, that's right. But and then there was a Black Christ movement going on around the country of people doing pictures, which preceded mine, I must say. And to give them credit, of course. And they didn't put it in those terms, but well, in a church, you're talking with people and I'm in front, close to the pulpit, and you see people rocking a little bit and leaning back and forth and looking up to God, say, God, he didn't say anything, but you learn to recognize when people are with you, but are not speaking up for you. And so I had, I think, a good group of people. Now, I will say this, and I was hired. So they met and they said, yeah, but there was one gentleman that missed the you know, the meetings. And when he came, I was always working when I started working, and he started saying, "Well, look, this person looks like they're Negro or black, or I think he even said a spook, you know." But I told him I was looking at people in the congregation. He shut up, you know, because he's black, and I said people up and down the street, and I didn't go into the thing of, look, we talking about people right outside of Africa, and that's an intellectual discussion, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, they saw that and they loved it. And history has shown that because that story that you're referring to, the piece that you're referring to, blew up in the media all over the world, especially in England. It went viral in England, and there was a big discussion about it on the media, and so here, one of the major NBC network, channel WRC Channel 4 is a network owned station. By the way, a lot of people don't realize it. It's not locally owned; it's network owned. So the network didn't pick up stuff lightly, and so of course I'm complimented. Of course it's good for my career, but I'm saying that the reality of it and what it started in different, especially online and network situations, which is, of course, in today's world is very powerful, probably more powerful. And yeah, it's exposing me to a lot of people and expressions of gratitude and all that sort of thing. And people want to buy my work more, my other work, and so that's all. That's all good. I mean, I'm a businessman. I definitely enjoy that, and it places me in a certain position up at Howard too, because universities expect the professors are going to get that kind of play, and because it helps recruit for the university and the prestige in the university. So all that's in the mix. For me, it's like I followed my heart, and I'm being appreciated. And so
So
that's
my last question is, it's one of those simple questions, but I'm sure you're going to put, another level of meaning to it. It's simply, what do you want to be remembered by?
no, that's exactly where I'm at right now. So your intuition or your because we know each other for a while. So I'm saying your insight is right on, and that's what I remember you for. If somebody calls your name, okay. So the simplicity of great ideas is what we are missing, actually. If I can get sort of rhetorical or conceptual at this moment. So you're talking about legacy,
Mm-hmm.
the term legacy, and that is constantly in my mind right now because stuff is jumbled up. My health is jumbled up. And I'm saying that people die of not being healthy enough to live in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I'm not trying to be morbid. I'm just saying that, our body is designed to hold up for a finite, not infinite amount of time. Okay. And so I'm fighting that right now to say, not ready yet, because I haven't secured the legacy. All right. When I secure it, I'll be comfortable because 76 is not bad. I'm saying I need 10 years at least. Okay. And I would love to be in my 90s when I succumb. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So my legacy is about being organized, being succinct to the point of this is the way I want to be remembered for my energy, for my work, for my love, and to have my family secure. My granddaughter's about to have a child. It means I'm gonna be a great grandfather. I would greatly want to see the development, not just the birth, but the development of that child into maturity. Okay, so that's an objective, along with whoever else gets pregnant or impregnates somebody in my family, my bloodline. I want to see that they, with my help, will be secure. That something of my artwork will be sold, and everybody will be able to get a house or something. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't have to be that big. I don't have to be rich. Matter of fact, richness is a problem. Being rich is a problem. I'm gonna tell you, and tell all your listeners is that you have to be very. If you're making a lot of money, or more money than you need to get along, to have, I mean, everybody needs a car and a house and have send their children to college you want to, or start them off. That's not rich. I'm saying when you have disposable income, you can't figure out. You're trying to say how much money is mine. That's rich, and that can bring you problems. And then people look at you as being rich, and so they look at you not necessarily with love, but they look at your money with love. So that's why I've actually avoided prosperity sometimes, but I don't have enough. I'm letting everybody listen. No, I'm not rich. I need some. Okay, so I need some cash because I have legitimate things to spend it on. That could be. So I buy my students some supplies sometimes we don't have them. That kind of stuff. And I'm generous in heart, but I gotta take in my family first, of course. But yeah, so I want to be known as being loving and generous, compassionate, and successful at what I went out to do, which is I'm working for my people's total liberation through my art expressions. That's pretty good.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good, Anderson. All right, so I'm going to stop the recording.